For those of you who don't know, my name is Michael Forrest, and welcome to I Am Possible. Now, before we get going, I'm going to ask if everybody can stay off of this top step here. This way, nobody really blocks this big display behind me. Gives a good, chance for everybody to see. It also gives me a little bit of room to move around, do the whole hosting thing, right? Another thing too is you're going to notice the microphone icon in your menu wheel at the very top of that, in your lower left there. And when that microphone is clear, that means we can hear you and what's happening in your environment. But when it's red like it is now, that means you're muted. We won't be able to hear you. So if somebody comes into your space and says, "Hey, are you still on that thing?" Feel free to answer them because we're not going to hear that. Also, you're going to notice there is, just because you're muted doesn't mean you can't express yourself. You're going to notice that there's a pink cheek smiling face in your menu wheel. And when you click on it, your emoji panel will open up in the air before you, giving you a wide variety of options with which to express yourself. So if somebody shares a story today that's really moving and it touches you right here and it starts to build up, right, you can just let it out, just let it flow just like that and show the love, right? Maybe somebody shares an exciting story where they swing across some quicksand, Tarzan style, and you're all very impressed. You can throw up the applause like that and show them how much you appreciate them, right? Also, if somebody tells a story that really resonates with you, you want to smile, you can do that. Maybe it's a sad story and you want to show them like, wow, this is really touching me. It's bringing me down. It's trying to kind of kill in the room here. You can do a little, frowny face like that. And maybe somebody tells a funny story and you want to show them that you're laughing. You can use this silly face emoji to do that. And then there's this thing. This is by far the most distracting of all the emojis, right? And there's a little confusion about this, at least for us. We don't use this to indicate I have a question or I want to get on the list or have something to say. We use this to let us know if there's a problem. So if, hey, Marco, I'm glad you reminded me of this, Marco. It's probably not a good idea to send me text messages if you can help it, because when you're up here and you're moving around, you do the hosting thing, all of a sudden you get a wall of text in front of you and it can really throw you off. So I'd really appreciate it if you can save the text messages like kind of till the end. Not that I don't appreciate the positive feedback. Thank you. But yeah, when you see this thing going up in front of you, right, this is a good way to let me know if there's a problem. So if, like, for example, I'm moving around and it looks like I'm talking, but no sound is coming out, you might want to let me know, right? This is our pact. This is our bond between you, the audience, and I, right? Also, if I only see one of these going up, I'm probably just going to keep on going because it might be somebody messing around. But if you see like 5 or 6 of them going on at one time, you're like, oh, there's a serious problem I need to address, right? So that's important to keep in mind. Now, you can press the X to close the emoji panel, but it's a good idea to keep it open during events like this because, one, it gives me feedback. It lets me know how I'm doing. But more importantly, it lets the people around you know what you're experiencing. So if the person next to you starts going like this, well, that means they found something funny, right? And you may not agree. You might be like, what's with this guy? That's not funny at all. I don't know what's that. And you can go stand over here. And you can do that because this is VR, except for, maybe on this top step because we have kind of an agreement about that, right? All right. So now, what is I Am Possible about? Well, I Am Possible is an event where we share stories, and these stories are where we ourselves or somebody we know or something we read or maybe a movie where somebody overcame difficult odds, do something that they thought or the people around them thought was impossible, right? Kind of where they, broke through something and achieved something they didn't think could be done, right? And this story doesn't have to be from the real world. It could be, somebody it could be something that happened in VR, like you didn't think you could build a world. As a matter of fact, the world that we're standing in right now, we didn't think this was possible while we were doing it. We built this on an Apple iPad and an old laptop that couldn't run Unity for more than 15 minutes at a time without crashing. And we use that word impossible a lot. As much as I hate it, we got stuck a bunch of times, but we kept on going. And now we have the Ravenhall Forum where we can gather under the stars and trade these kind of stories, so we just kind of kept on going, right? So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Now, I'm going to start out, right, by, first of all, let's give an idea of how this is going to work. You're going to notice in your lower right that a raise hand button is going to appear as if by magic. That's kind of what magic looks like in VR, right? Now, what's going to happen here is you're going to find that, if you press that button, you get on our list. And between the gaps between stories, so somebody finishes, right, we'll call on you, and then, you can participate in that way. But pauses are the natural enemy of the Altspace event host. Can't stand them. Right. So rather than saying, oh, does anybody have anything to add? I got a couple stories that I'm going to share for the spots in between. And I'm going to start out by telling you guys, if you want to get that list, just, press that raise hand button or you'll get on the list. I'm going to start out by telling you how I came to really kind of not stand this word. Right. When I was a kid, I had one summer where I had these, bullies, like these older kids. They're about 2 or 3 years older than me. And they were chasing me down this alleyway every single day in Brooklyn, in New York. And, I was, every day they'd come up to me. They'd beat me up. Right. And they tell me things. They tell me, like, don't fight back. It's impossible, right? And they tell me not to run. They said, it's impossible. You'll never escape, right? And every day this would happen. And, I thought I knew what that word meant. Impossible meant something you couldn't do, right? And, I was a really young kid. And I just, kind of just stopped fighting back. I just accepted this. This was life, right? And then one day, my dad, he had owned the bar at the time, and a man came into the bar with a shopping bag. And he had a few drinks, and When he's about to settle his bill, he asked my dad, he says, you have any kids at home? And my dad's like, well, I got 2 boys at home. And he goes, well, they're really going to like this. And he picks up the shopping bag, right? And he puts it on the bar and he pushes it across to my dad. And my dad, he opens the bag and he looks inside. And, I think he's thinking, this is the biggest tip I ever got in my life. It's going to be filled with cash. And he looks inside. And what was inside was a stack of Batman comics. So I brought him home and he slipped the first under my door. And the morning when I got up, I saw the comic there and I picked it up and I read it. Right. And I didn't read this like a kid reads a comic. I read this like it was an instruction manual. Right. This was like a how-to guide. Right. And what I did was I took an old backpack and I modified it. On the side pocket, I made like a drawstring and I filled it up with marbles. And then I went out, and, typical day. Right. And then, these kids, they chased me down the alleyway again. And while they were chasing me, I reached back and I pulled on that drawstring really hard. And you heard all the glass marbles. They clattered all over the pavement. Right. And all of a sudden, I started going further than I ever had before. Right. And like I made it to the garages and there was this brick wall and I got up that and I got on top of the garage and I looked back down the alleyway. You know what I saw? I saw all these kids falling down still. They kept trying to it was out of a movie. It was funny. They would try to get up and they would fall down. And I started giggling. I started laughing. It was funny. And then all of a sudden I stopped laughing because it dawned on me. I realized I had just done what they said could not be done. Right? I had just done what they said was impossible. So clearly this word did not mean what people think it meant. And I felt I had a responsibility to let people know. So what I did was I went to the library, and the statute of limitations is up now, so I can confess this. What I did was every dictionary in that building, I had to look up the word impossible, and I crossed it out with black marker. Right? I just removed it. Right? And then ever since that time, whenever I hear that word, it's kind of like a dare for me. Right? And so, as things progressed and went on, for my life, I just, do not like that word, because I think it limits us. As a matter of fact, when we first started this event, there was, it was, pretty good turnout, and we had, a lot of people sharing stories. And at the end of it, we kind of concluded that it wasn't the word itself that was the problem; it was our relationship to the word. Right? We found that, the word itself can kind of limit you and what you think you can do. Right? I don't see anybody on the list yet, so I'm going to move into another one. This is actually one of my favorites. It's kind of in keeping with the one that came before it. In the early days of the United States, there, when the gold rush was on and everybody was, going nuts looking for gold. What happened was there was an old miner who came in possession of all things a gold mine. I mean, can you imagine a miner with a mine? It's just insane. But he would go into this mine. He would work it every day. And at the end of the day, he would go into town, into the saloon, and he would have a few drinks. And every day there was a man that would come up to him and ask him, listen, I'll take that mine off your hands. And the miner was like, there's no way I'm ever going to sell. I can feel it in my bones. I'm definitely going to find gold in there. I know it's in there. I'm just going to keep on trying. Right. And every day it was the same thing. The miner would come into town. He would go into the saloon. He'd have a few drinks. And the man would approach him, asking him to sell the mine. And every day the miner came in there and he looked a little bit more beat up and haggard and worn down. He was tired. Right. And it just kept coming in there and, it was a little bit more beat up every day. And then one day that miner had one of those days, and I'm sure you've all had them, that, where, his pickaxes were breaking, his fuses were wet, and, nothing was really working out for him. And, so the man came up to him, and before he could even ask, the miner says, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the mine. I'll sell it to you. And he gave it to him at a good price, and he, went about his days. And a few days later, he comes into the saloon and, sees that the man he sold the mine to was celebrating. He kept telling him, he was buying everybody drinks, and he was high energy. And the miner went up to him and he said, what's the occasion? And the guy says, well, that mine you sold me, we found gold. And the miner's like, you got to tell me, how close was I? And the man says, well, I only dug about 3 feet. Right? Now, for the rest of that miner's life, every time he faced a difficult challenge, every single time he thought he wasn't going to make it, he would tell himself, I'm 3 feet from gold. And that philosophy led him to go on to live a very successful life. He was very successful after that, and a lot of times life is like that. When you're facing an obstacle and when you're about that moment, when you're right about to give up, right when you're about to give up, that's usually about the time where you start kind of breaking to the other side of it and you can actually achieve the thing. All right, let's see. Who we got on the list here. We've got Delighted. What's up? Come on up here and see what you got here. What's going on? You're on the air.
Oh, good. So
everybody, listen to that voice. Listen to that voice. Am I right? Listen to
so
good.
Thank you. So this Friday. Well, so for most of human history, slavery was a given. Everybody enslaved anybody they conquered. The Greeks had slaves. Virtually every the U.S. American Indians had slaves. The Bible connoted slavery was just a given. There were the few people who opposed it. There were a few people who thought, okay, well, we'll fight against it. But they all knew it was not possible because it was deeply ingrained in human history. But this Friday, we celebrate Juneteenth. We celebrate that day in 1863 when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. And even the United States gave up and outlawed slavery. And thus far, it's worked and it's lasted. So it was not impossible.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All
Michael.
right. No, thank you, Delighted. That was cool. I like that. I actually used an expression there. It's not related to what you were saying at all, but it made me think you said about it being a given. And there's a small group, I can confess this. You know that expression, it's a given, right?
Yes,
All
of course.
my life since I was a kid, I always said it's a given, like the monkey, and nobody's ever noticed. I don't know. Actually, that's not true. There was one person that noticed, in my life, but most people don't pick it up. It's it's a game, really. All right, but that's kind of off topic. We have kind of a small group today, so I'm kind of trying to keep it casual. All right,
I
let's see.
understand.
So, let's see. Who else do we have here? Let's see if there's anyone else on the list here. Okay, we do not. So I'm going to jump into another one. Let's see here. Actually, there was a couple in. We're down to like two people. Oh wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. Cool. We'll keep on going. It's fine. There was a couple who had a young child, and this child at the age of 4 could already speak 3 languages. So his parents were, pretty impressed with him. He was a good kid, and but gradually they started noticing that the kid was starting to slur his words a lot. He was starting to bump into things, and he had just started, school, and he was having problems with other kids, and it didn't seem like their boy. It seemed like he was off. So they took him to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, the father travels a lot. Maybe they pick something up, and they did a bunch of tests. And they couldn't come up with anything, and they kept on trying because the parents kept insisting there was something wrong. And then they eventually diagnosed him with a disease I have no business trying to pronounce, but it's commonly known as ALD, right? And it was a degenerative disease. And they told him, listen, your son is going to die in the next, couple of years, and there's not a lot you can do about it. And they gave him a number of a support group and basically told him to spend as much time with you can to come to terms with it. And see, the thing though is the parents didn't accept this. They said no, right? They didn't ever contact the support group. The support group even came to the house telling them like, look, you have to accept this. And the parents were like, no. And they started doing like a lot of research. Now you got to bear in mind that these parents, they only basically had a high school education with regard to math and sciences and stuff like that. But they kept studying, and they got access to medical libraries, and they taught themselves the language of math, of science, of chemistry. They started reading about animal testing, and all these experiments that had been done, and they really like became familiar with the material, and they started talking to other doctors, and all the doctors were telling them, listen, you're lay people, you have no concept of how this is going to be. Like you got to accept what's going to happen here. And they said no. They refused to accept it. So they kept digging, and they came across this oil that had a property of separating the lipids out from the blood in such a way that they felt that it would slow down the disease. And the doctors told them that they were ridiculous, right? But they started administering this to the son's diet, and they had the son's blood tested, and wouldn't you know it, the disease was starting to slow down. So they started to they started to contact all these chemists and pharmacists, and they were coming in contact with all these companies and this is in the days before there was email. All right, they were doing like phone calls, they were writing letters by hand, and they contacted over 100 different pharmaceutical companies and chemists, asking if they would produce and refine this oil for them. And eventually one of these letters landed on the desk of a chemist who was going to retire, and it was his last day. But he was so touched by the letter that he contacted the family, and he said, listen, I'll produce this oil for you, but we're going to have to call it something. And if it's okay with you, we'd like to name it after your son. And they called it Lorenzo's Oil. There was even a movie about this. And what happened was, they refined this oil, and then the son, he lived to the age of 28, where he eventually died from pneumonia related to complications from the disease. I'm not saying he had an easy life. He stuck around for a lot longer than they thought he was going to. And what they did was now anytime somebody, is diagnosed with having the markers for this disease in their blood, right? Now an organization will contact them, and they'll be given this oil that'll stop the disease from progressing. All right. And this is all because two regular normal people refused to accept that word, all right, because they were told it was impossible, and they kept on going. And eventually, all right, toward the end of the parent's life, the medical institution eventually came around saying there was actually something to this oil. All right. They're testing it now, and it's already saved thousands of lives just because two regular normal people said no. And that's it. You can, do that. Now let's see. We do have some people on the list here. Let's see what we have. Let's see. Kalima, you're on the air. I love saying that. You get to feel like a radio host. Hey, Kalima, you're on the air. What's up? You have a story you'd like to share with us? You got to press that accept button
Yes.
if you want to go.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, cool. You want to come
Okay.
on up here? Come on up here so everybody
Okay.
can see you. You feel all space famous
Right.
on YouTube. Oh yeah, and very quickly, these episodes that we have, they are aired on YouTube. So if you like kind of overshare and be like, oh no, I don't want my mom to hear that, just let us know and we'll make sure we edit it out. All right. So go ahead, Kalima. What's up?
Okay. So my story started when my son was young and he was having some problems, speech delays, and then sent him to occupational therapy, and they noticed that he was not tracking very well with his eyes. And I was doing everything I can to improve his capabilities. And oh, excuse me, my dog is barking. I apologize
That's
for that.
fine. That's
So
fine.
one of the things we did was take him to a vision therapist and start asking questions about what they could do. And we put him through a round of vision therapy, which was really time consuming because it was an hour away from where we live. And it was really expensive because the insurance company didn't pay for any of it. So this was all coming out of pocket. And he had really, really good results with it. He was probably kindergarten age at that point, maybe preschool, but somewhere around there, and had really, really good results with it. And I was really pleased. Well, while I was going through this process, I asked about my own vision because I'd had some vision problems from birth, had a lot of surgery on my eyes when I was younger, and had a lot of people tell me that, well, this is as good as it's going to get. The problems I was having with my eyes were that my eyes don't focus together. They have eye turns. So I was born cross-eyed, and well, surgery temporarily straightened it. Eventually, they drifted apart again, and my eyes would not work together. So I had very little depth perception. Had a lot of things that I would compensate with, but had a lot of problems and would be constantly changing focus from one eye to another eye, and just had a lot of problems with it. It made reading difficult, made a lot of things difficult. But the optometrists all said, well, accept it. There's nothing you can do about it. And I was really disheartened about this. And so when I saw the results my son was getting, I asked, is there anything I could do? And the first was told, well, no, you're too old. You're too old. It doesn't work on older people. But I kept pushing and found out there is something they can do, and started working with the therapist myself. And while I'm not where I would like to be, I have had great increases in my vision. And again, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of money. And I actually got into VR because I'm doing some exercises on a virtual reality device for my vision. And now even I'm thinking about taking some more computer science classes to learn how to produce apps myself that can help people
That's
with
awesome.
vision. So yeah, I've just really turned around, and this, after being told for so many years, there's nothing you can do, you're too old. I found no, not true. There's a lot I can do. It's not perfect. It's going to take a long time to get there, but yeah, I'm excited about it.
Just don't ever
So
give
that's
up.
my story.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that, Kalima. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. And that's true. A lot of times, like, it's easy to think that, doctors know everything. But I tell you, my mom years back, she had a heart attack, and it was really bad. We were really scared about it. And, the doctors told her she wasn't going to make it. And, turns out she didn't make it. Right. And then they said, well, she's around, she's okay, but her kidneys are shot and they're not going to come back. You know what? They did come back. Right. And a lot of time, and they were using that I word again. They were saying that impossible word, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. But it turns out, that she was a fighter, and she, fought back, and she's been around many years since then. So, that's a very good thing. So you can't always take that word. When people say that, sometimes, like I said, when I hear that word, I kind of see it as a dare. And you keep going. You don't ever give up. And you're right about the eyes in VR. I've experienced that actually. I have a medical condition myself. You'll hear me saying this a lot of other events that that I've been in bed for a long time because of a medical condition. All right, and what this was I was living in Brooklyn, and the apartment I was staying in, it had mold in it, right? Like, and I wasn't aware of this, and it turned out. Well, I mean, what happened was I was running a business at the time, and toward the end of the day, I had found that I'd spend all day trying to remember how to write a check. There was something wrong. I was acting confusing, and my parents, they noticed. They take me out for breakfast, and I'd be acting kind of, like strange, really, not like myself. And so they got me out of there. And when they were getting me out of there, they went in to help me move my stuff. And they went in there and they said the air was kind of like it had a presence to it. Not like it was haunted, nothing like that, but there was something off about it. And it's not like it smelled. You could just it was like you could almost see the air, right? So they had the air tested, and the air sample, only 10% of the air was actually oxygen, right? The rest of it was comprised of two of the deadliest molds known to mankind, right? If you ever heard of black mold, that was one of them. And what happened was they were, it was scary because I had been living in there and working, from home full time for years, right? So as soon as I got out of that environment, my body started to try to push the mold out, right? And that's when things got really bad, right? I spent the first year like on the floor. It was really just really bad. And gradually, my parents, they got me they got me an iPad tablet with a pencil, and I started drawing and stuff, and they got me this so I'd reconnect with the world. And then I got an Oculus Go, and I'd been reading about alt space, and I was very eager to get in here. And when I got in here, I started volunteering for alt space. I started hosting events and helping out around the community. And just by being useful, because I mean, you guys know with this COVID thing, when you're at home, you kind of lose track of the days, right? Well, that's what was happening to me. I had no reason to be there, and I was just like kind of just in bed, kind of wasting away. But now all of a sudden, right, I had somewhere I needed to be. I mean, you look at the size of the audience; a bunch of people just came in, right? And like these are people who were expecting me to be there, like Tuesday at 2:00, you have to be there, right? And all of a sudden, I became very aware of what day it was, right? And I started, pushing myself harder and harder, doing more. The first event I hosted, part of my condition was that my heart wouldn't slow down. My heart rate would go all day really, really fast. Like for 20 hours, just it felt like you were running a race. And I came in, and the first event I ever hosted, right? My heart was beating out of my chest, and I was going, my poor audience, I was just going, that thing, up there. Yeah. And so, it was kind of difficult, but I kept on going because I really liked feeling useful. I really enjoyed doing it. And gradually over time, that racing heart just kind of slowed down. And then I was getting out of bed, more and more because I had to work on the computer stuff to build spaces like this. And, and I was really dizzy in the beginning, but I was fine. I got to a point where I could last all day. And then came Beat Saber. You guys play Beat Saber, right? That helped me build my body back up, right? So gradually, just by not giving up, I was able to, to keep on going, right? And that's the kind of thing you got to, you got to keep on pushing yourself, and you'll be able to reach places you never thought you could, right? And that's a good thing. We got time for one more. We got Umbrella. I can't see the full name here. Umbrella, you still around here? Let's see. You're on air, I think. Should be on air. Umbrella, no, I'm not seeing you. Okay, maybe you left a space. That's possible too. All right, so, but yeah, so never give up. That's really important, and you'll be able to overcome a lot of obstacles. And while I don't believe in the word impossible, I do believe in all of you. All right. That being said, let's see. I think we have time for one more, but I don't see anybody else on the list. So I'm gonna tell a real quick one here. When I was in my late teens, I was really in like camping and hiking and stuff like that. And I didn't have all the equipment yet. I was actually, like I'd go in construction boots with the steel toes because, they looked like hiking boots. I looked like a hiker, but I really have a lot of experience with it. And my friend Chris and I went up to upstate New York, a place called Lake George. And before we went there, there'd been a few months of like a very long rainy season. And so there were all these beautiful waterfalls coming down into the lake. And we were looking forward to seeing them. So when we got there, we went to explore one of them. And once we got up, to one of these waterfalls, we're just hanging out there. And my friend Chris was playing around, and he slipped on a rock, and the current of the we're on top of the waterfall, so the current of the water actually pushed him right into my legs. I fell over, and both of us exploded off the edge of the waterfall. Right, we fell down about 12 feet, splashed in the water, and we weren't hurt. We came up out of the water, we were laughing. We thought it was pretty funny. We came up to the shore to get back out of the water, and then we stopped laughing because we couldn't get back out of the water. Every time we tried to grab on or get a foothold, all these like huge like walls of mud were coming down with like boulders in them. Right. So it was like, it felt kind of dangerous. And so we, backed up a little bit. What are we going to do? And I looked across the lake and I saw this, big boulder where our campsite was, and I could see the tents and everything. And I figured, well, we're both strong swimmers, so let's just swim for it. Not a big deal. Right. But we got to the middle of the lake, and, Chris called out to me, and I was like, what's up? And he goes, Mike, I don't think I'm going to make it. Right. And I looked back where we came from, and I looked at the campsite, and we were about halfway there. So it was the same distance either way. Now, if we went back to the waterfall, we probably still wouldn't be able to get out of the water. There was no supplies, no access to any help, and so I convinced them to keep on going, so we dug in and we started swimming, right? And got a little further, and all of a sudden, I didn't think I could make it. And I called out and I told him so. But at this point, the adrenaline must have kicked in or something with Chris, but he started sounding like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen those Rocky movies, but that's what he sounded like. He's like, dig in, you got to make it, you got to keep on pushing, You know, he might have called me a bum at one point. I'm not sure. But, you know, what happened was he kept on yelling out stuff. I kept yelling out stuff, and we kept pushing each other until eventually we came up out of the water, right, by that boulder, and we just collapsed right there. And we lay still for like an hour. And after that hour, Chris just said, we made it. And we ended up staying an extra day just to recover from this. We were really beat up from it. But, it's kind of, sometimes you make a decision. I'm not going to go out like this. And you keep on pushing, and you end up, in a more positive place. All right. Now, looks like we are about out of time, but before we wrap things up, I want to thank you all for joining us today. And if you enjoyed our content, please go to altvr.com to where it says channels. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Umbrella. Just getting another text here. I don't like getting those texts when I'm performing, but that was very positive. Thank you. So yeah, if you go to altvr.com in the upper left, you can see where it says channels, and there'll be a list of all space event channels. And there, among them, you'll see Ravenhall events, like it says on that back wall. And when you click on that, you get taken to our event page. There's a join Discord button if you want to say hello. There's also the most important button on here, subscribe button. And when you press it, it lets all space know that you enjoy our content. And we don't get paid to do this. It makes us feel really good when we see that number go up. It makes us feel even better when you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that would also be appreciated. All right. Now, we usually end our events by taking everybody flying, and we're going to end it with something that once we thought was impossible. All right. I always end the events by taking everybody flying, and we've played around with different ways to make this process happen. And what we ended up doing was I thought it would be really cool to have a ship come in and take us there, right? And we came up with what we call the Ravenhall Talon hovercraft. And to bring it in, we're going to press this button, all right? And keep in mind that this button, we thought was impossible at one point, right? But we really worked hard on it. And what's going to happen is when I press it, you're going to see a hovercraft come up over that wall where Hummingbird is standing. It's going to come up over that wall, and it's going to fly across the forum, and it's going to land on that landing pad, and we're going to go off to the flight academy, where if you haven't learned how to fly yet, we can show you. And if you have any questions or you want to say hello, we can do that too. All right, so let me unmute everybody, because I like hearing the reactions to this thing. All right, you're all free to speak at will. There you go. All right, now, yes, this button right here, everybody. We're gonna press this. All right, ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. Push.
Ravenhall Talon aircraft en route to your position. Please stay clear of the landing pad. Thank you.
All right, now you can see it coming up over this wall here. Now you can fly the ships if you like. At the flight academy, we actually have the ships that you can fly around in them if you like. And let's go check it out. So it's going to go over there and touch down, and let's head on out. Come up these stairs here. All right, here we go. Coming down. Very nice.
Talon aircraft is now boarding for transport to the Ravenhall Flight Academy. Please step into the blue light. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. You've been a great audience. See you at the Academy.